to do day 2 of our Easter weekend videos. We are technically going to be discussing what will be day 5. Day 5 displays Christ's road to the cross as one of betrayal, mockery, and injustice, yet he stayed his course, choosing to die for the sins of the world. So, on that day, when Christ is betrayed, judged, beaten beyond recognition, and hung on a cross, it was done for a crime that he did not commit. After midnight, early on that Friday morning, Jesus is approached by Judas, who betrays him with a kiss. That was the sign that Judas told the Roman soldiers and leaders who escorted him to Jesus. After the kiss of betrayal, Jesus would ask them who they were looking for, and they would reply, Jesus of Nazareth, to which Jesus would reply, I am he. This epically powerful moment would send those guards flying through the air and onto the ground. His powerful phrase of I am was the same used by God in Exodus 3:14. Though Jesus was about to be taken, this certainly did not mean that Jesus had lost control. Everything that was being done to Jesus happened because he allowed it to happen. He was in control the entire time, and what a powerful Savior we serve. From the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus is taken to the place of the high priest. Remember, all of this is taking place after midnight, in the secret of the night, so as to avoid stirring up any trouble for all the visitors in the town for the Passover week. Jesus was too popular among the people because of the life he lived and because of days 1 through 3 in his last week. The Jewish leaders knew that if they caused a scene, it would cause a riot. If the Jews rioted, the Roman-occupied government would have to intervene and things could get really ugly. There was a lot in the balance, and the Jewish leaders were playing their cards very carefully. It's at the high priest's palace where they have their first informal trial of Jesus. It's in John chapter 18, verses 13 through 14 and 19 through 24. They bring him before Annas, who is the father-in-law of Caiaphas. Since Annas is not able to get anything out of Jesus, he sends him on to his son-in-law Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin, where Jesus experiences his second trial, this time more formal. They get together and continue to question Jesus. It is here where they condemn Jesus for blasphemy, but they know the Roman government won't care about that, so they also charge Jesus with being a threat to Rome because he claimed he would destroy the temple in John chapter 2, verses 19 through 21. Of course, when Jesus said that, he was not only speaking of the future destruction of the temple in 70 AD by the Greeks, but he was also speaking about him being put to death. At this trial, they began to mock and hit him, and this beating, of course, was predicted in Isaiah 52, verse 14. However, since the Jews couldn't execute an individual under Roman law, they now had to convince the Roman government that Jesus was a real threat and guilty. After the trial with Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin, they take him to Pilate for Roman trial. Again, all of this is on a time crunch because the Jewish leaders are still trying to keep this whole event from the people and avoid a riot. Pilate had been appointed as the governor of Judea by Emperor Tiberius. Normally, Pilate would have been in Caesarea by the Mediterranean Sea, but the festivities of the Passover required his presence to ensure peace during a politically turbulent time. Pilate begins the questioning with, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Pilate's only concern was whether or not Jesus was a threat to the Roman Empire. After Jesus talks about being the king of a kingdom that is not part of this world and conveys that he has no intention of overcoming Rome, Pilate concludes that Jesus is not guilty. Pilate then learns that Jesus is a Galilean, so he sends him to be tried under that jurisdiction, which falls under Herod Antipas. This begins another short trial. Herod actually wants to meet Jesus because he had heard so much about him. However, Jesus refuses to cave to the whims of a godless leader and ignores him. Herod Antipas then allows more beatings and shaming to go on before sending him back to Pilate. Jesus is now sent to Pilate for the last time, where he will eventually be condemned to die. It is here where Pilate struggles to condemn Jesus because he sincerely feels Jesus is innocent. But the Jewish leaders make it seem like if he doesn't, then he's betraying Rome, and word may get back to the emperor. To free his conscience, Pilate then offers the Jews the option to free Barabbas or Jesus. Evidently, a custom had developed in which the Roman governor would release a prisoner with each Passover. The people cry out that they would rather Barabbas be set free and Jesus be killed on a cross. The gathered crowd gets their wish, and Jesus begins the beating and death process. Jesus, a man declared not guilty by the Roman governor, is nonetheless given over for execution, an outrageous and transparent miscarriage of justice. How true this is. Out of all the injustices in this world, this is by far the greatest ever known to man. However, it was the only way that mankind can receive forgiveness of sins. Amazingly, John notes that this final verdict came at about the 6th hour, around 12 p.m., on the day of preparation of the Passover, which would have been the time that the lambs were slaughtered for the Sabbath dinner for Passover week. Imagine the attachment the children and family members would have toward the little innocent lamb. This is exactly how the disciples would feel when their Christ was taken and brutally dealt with. It was on the cross where Jesus would pay for the sins of the entire world. Joseph of Arimathea would end up giving up his tomb that he made for himself and giving it to Jesus.